have some NAU socks somewhere at home
awesome.
too from that.
I've always thought, I've got some of my favorite socks are from a construction company.
Yeah.
Actually, yeah, they got you can't give someone. What I've learned about swag is you can't give away crappy swag,
Right.
Because if you got something that's crappy, right, then people will associate you with that bad pen. Right?
Yeah, the trinket is something that just doesn't work.
It's a motto,
I know.
yes.
You gotta go.
That's what I came in here with. Nick's like, well, we don't really have a budget. And I was like, I'm going to buy nice stuff.
Nice stuff, indeed.
It's worth it.
Yo,
Yeah.
for sure.
All right, Matt, kick us off.
All right. Welcome, John Tingerthal. You are the Associate Dean Professor for...
So I'm associate chair.
Associate Chair.
Yep.
Perfect. For NAU's Construction Management Program. This
Exactly.
is episode 13 of the Honest Truth About Construction podcast. So welcome. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Yeah, so I'm the associate chair in the Department of Civil Engineering, Construction Management, and Environmental Engineering, and specifically, I run the Construction Management Program at NAU.
Fantastic. So how'd you even come about being there? Like, what's your history? What's your background? What got you at NAU, coming from Minnesota, just like Nick, kind of just making the trek out to Arizona, warmer weather, I suppose.
Well, my background is structural engineering. So I'm a structural engineer, and, it was one of those things that's what I wanted to do. I think when I discovered it through, maybe 11th grade, that being a structural engineer, through the path of civil engineering programs was where I wanted to go. Originally I wanted to be an architect and realized I didn't have that creative, creating things from scratch. But I found that I loved taking things that needed a solution, and kind of really led me to engineering. And so did my undergraduate degree in the University of Minnesota, and then did my master's degree in civil engineering at the University of Illinois, and ended up in Chicago doing consulting structural engineering work. Worked for a company called Perkins & Will, and then Thornton Tomasetti in Chicago doing, structural design. And in about, must have been about 2003, 2004, kind of decided that, I needed a change. And actually just decided to almost retire in my early 30s. Not really retire, but I just wanted to do something different, and ended up just leaving and traveling. And my wife and I just took off and traveled for a couple of years, said, we've got opportunity. Let's find a place we'd love to stay and love to live. And it brought us to Flagstaff for her to go back to school. And so I started teaching part-time in the civil engineering program, and was approached by the people leading the construction management program, saying, hey, we need someone to teach engineering in our program. And that's how I got into it. So my background is all on the design side, and that was 2007, 2008. And ever since then, just been, I have that perspective of the designers, but I've learned a lot about construction from my colleagues and from working with construction companies. And so, in our program, we have about 8 faculty now, and the variety of backgrounds come from pure construction management, engineering, combinations of engineering, design, architecture, facilities management, design, kind of across the whole board. And really, the program at NAU, it's important to have the faculty have that background, the background working in industry.
That's awesome. Are the faculty members still actually working in the industry, or are they full-time teachers, consulting on the side? How's that?
A little bit of everything, yeah. Our positions are typically 9-month positions, which give everyone, that 3 months in the summer to, kind of do what you want. And so we have faculty who use it with family time. We have faculty who are doing, having engineering companies on the side. People are doing project management jobs. we've had people who will work for facilities at the university running projects. Most of our faculty the positions are what we call professors of practice. And one of the requirements of professor of practice is to stay current in your field. And so, we get part of the job is to stay up to date with the state of the art in construction. So it's kind of difficult to do that, during the year, but if you have the time, you can do things on the side as well.
Do you do anything on the side?
Family. I've decided, time is worth more to me. And actually, I end up with my position, I have like an 11-month contract. So in the summer, I'm pretty much just doing a lot of catch up and trying to keep in the program together. And, we've just been able to hire a couple new people and just doing all the administrative work that needs to be done.
Approximately how many students are in the program, and kind of two-part question, like where does that put the program on a national level?
So we have about 260 students in the program, somewhere between 60 or so graduating each year. It's a medium-sized program. The biggest programs are going to be running in maybe the 8 to 9, maybe even 1,000 students. And a small program is going to be in kind of that 50 to 100. And I've always said that 300 is kind of that sweet spot where up to about 300 people in the program, we still have this community sense. I mean, by the time people graduate, we know the graduates by name. We know everybody. It really has that sense. And when you start to get big, I was talking to a colleague of mine they got 800 students in the program, and it just gets a little bit out of control.
I think so that was attractive to Venn in pursuing interns and new hires. That was one of the things that was attractive to us, about NAU. And one of the reasons that we targeted NAU over the last handful of years to really work on, kind of building a presence up there, meeting some of the students, meeting some of the faculty and the staff. And in a similar way, our company is sized as a medium-sized company, kind of for the same reason. We want to know our clients. We want to have an opportunity to pursue things that are advantageous for both us and our clients. I think it becomes a bit of a disadvantage when you're beholden to a large revenue number or a large headcount, where it's like we have to just kind of do everything to meet this number. We have to do everything to have this amount of people or whatever. And so I think that was one of the things that attracted us, with NAU, and we got an opportunity, which I didn't realize how difficult it was going to be, but we got an opportunity to do the career fair that you guys put on in the fall. And we were blown away. I mean, honestly, the way that it was run, the companies that were represented there, and then the way that the students from freshmen were, walking up, hi, how are you? Handshakes, eye contact, these little things that sound insignificant but are really major when you're looking at new candidates, when you're looking at interns, when and so the quality of of what you guys are doing to interact with industry, was one of the things, in size and all that kind of stuff, was really impactful and attractive to us.
It's really a two-way street too. I mean, we have such good engagement from the construction industry, and it's one of those things where, like, with our events, with our sponsorships and whatnot, there is this sense that we're providing graduates to get out into the industry, and we take it seriously. The faculty, like I said, we're small enough that we know a lot of our students, but we also spend a lot of time making sure that they engage, right? They engage early with the industry. Those freshmen that are like, well, why am I going to the career fair? I'm 4 years out. I'm like, no, but you need to start making those relationships now. You need to start practicing. You need to go out there, and you're not just getting a job. You're looking at a career. You need to find a company that has a culture that matches your own personality. Because if you're just going for the company that offers you the truck or $3,000 more than the other company, that's not going to matter in 3 years, right? You're gonna earn what you're worth. And if you get a lot early, you may not grow. But if you find a company that you can feel is like a family, is home, that's huge. And that's not what young people really think about a lot. You know, they're thinking about just kind of the idea of I'm going to get a job so I can pay the rent and things like that. And so developing those relationships is really key. You know, the hard thing with the size of the program is we don't really have a lot of control over the size. If you are admitted to NAU, you may declare construction management as your major and take the classes. So we don't have a quota or anything like that. And so it's a little bit scary because, I mean, it is what it is, right? I look at my numbers, I'm like, I've got this many students this year, right? There's a lot of pressure from industry to generate more graduates because everybody is in high demand.
Right.
So if we could produce 100 graduates a year, that would be great, right? So we do spend a fair amount of time trying to get out there and recruit. But, you know, it's one of those things like when if the dog catches the car, what do you do with it, right?
Yeah.
And so it's always this balance, you know.
Yeah.
We can only support so much. And, you know, what industry provides us in terms of, you know, not just the financial support, but also having people come into the classrooms, interacting with our students. You know, we have an advisory board, an industry advisory board that helps us if we need, you know, assistance making our case to the university and things like that. It's really powerful.
I like that. What do you see as next for the program? What are you working towards? What are some of the goals or visions that you see for the program over the next few years?
So, you know, it's maintaining quality and increasing our enrollments. I mean, we have to increase the enrollments a little bit. It's a weird thing because class sizes have a certain, cap on them just by virtue of size of classroom and what works. And, you know, if you get over those caps a little bit and it's hard to open up another section, right? So, but by growing a little bit more, you can then start offering more to the students. So growth, you know, controlled growth is super important. Maintaining and holding on to our faculty. I mean, we know that almost any of our faculty would come here and probably make twice as much working for you, right? I mean, just because. Don't say that. But, you know, I mean, in the industry, it's a good job that you can get.
Yeah.
And the university, you know, the pay scale is just totally different, right? So we do whatever we can to keep our faculty happy. Yeah. And so that's something that's really important to me. In terms of growing the enrollment, you know, the big opportunity really is women, right? I mean, we maybe have 10 to 12% women, which is pretty standard for construction management programs across the country. Maybe even on the kind of a little bit over the average. Yet that's not a very big number, right? And so whatever we can do to attract women into construction. And I think we lose them at age 10, right? I think it's age 10, age 11, people see construction, they think manual labor, they think digging in the dirt, you know, pounding nails, not realizing that it's a profession. It's as much about people as it is about putting together a project, right? And so getting more women, but also, you know, I think there's a lot of reason, you know, women struggle in construction. I mean, you know, it's still, as much as we try to address issues of respect and equity out there, I still hear stories from my students doing internships that are not experiencing what you would expect, what I would expect.
Correct.
You know, this day and age, it's more of that traditional being treated to, you know, go out and get coffee and not really be engaged like they might engage, you know, someone who's more traditional in the construction. So huge potential there. Yeah. And we got a lot of work to do, not just as the university, but as an industry to address that problem.
Yeah.
So what are you guys doing to actually promote that. And like Gavin, for example, he was a computer science major and then decided to switch into CM internally at NAU and then even externally when you're recruiting freshmen. How are you going about doing that in a way where not only are you recruiting males and females, but maybe even specifically targeting new female students?
Yeah, so we have an organization, NAWIC, right? NAWIC has a pretty strong presence in our program, and one of our faculty members, Agnes Droji, she runs that group with the women, but also getting the men involved with an organization like that, right? Understanding that they have a place to talk about things and whatnot. So at one level, we provide those opportunities. We engage with industry, so we'll bring people in from industry to kind of talk about that. I think the important part of that isn't so. It's important to support the women in the program and know that if new women are coming into the program, they're not going to be alone, but also working on the men in the program, because that's where things are going to change. If a young lady comes into our computer lab and is not treated well, they're not going to stay. And it's the guys that we really have to work on. And so I don't know, throwing this off on Gavin, what can we do? You're more in the trenches with them.
I mean, I've been a TA for a year now in the freshman level classes, and just kind of like a large part is teaching the students, respect everyone regardless of what. And I've been helping in the 300 level with you and also the freshman level with another professor. And I'll hold office hours, and a lot of time it's, the females that are coming in being like, hey, I've got this issue in another class. Because I have a big emphasis of I'm also a student. You'll see me in classes probably with you at some point. Like, don't be afraid to talk to me. Don't be afraid to talk to your teacher, even though he's a lot older than you. They're still like, they could be a father figure or a parental figure if you want, but it's also if you're more comfortable talking to another student, a younger student, someone who is a little closer to you in age, and you're more comfortable with that, just having a comfortable, open environment for everybody, regardless of, whatever it may be. And I've also had to, sit down with other students and be like, hey, knock this off, man. It's, I know that was okay where you're from, but it's a little different now. This is, big boy land of school and business and all that's coming out.
In terms of recruiting, if I get a prospective student coming through taking a tour, the first thing I do, if it's the right time of day, I'll bring them into the lab and I'll just sit them down with the young ladies and say, hey, talk to these women and say, and find out what it is like from their perspective. And that's really important.
Yeah, that's cool. I think we've seen a large emphasis on that in the industry, specifically over the last handful of years. It really is changing of a mindset. I think where you started the conversation is really kind of where we've seen the most positive change, where it's like, hey, we need to get it out there that it's not, you're not digging a trench all day, you're not pounding the nails, doing that type of stuff. The profession and the professional aspect, the skills that rise to the top are communication and organization almost every time, right? And so if you think about that, those skills from a gender perspective, it doesn't really matter, right? And so it's been, I think, better promoted over the last handful of years. And I think things like this and some of the marketing efforts and the social medias and that type of stuff allow and assist with that, with kind of getting the word out that this is for everybody, right? So that's cool that you guys are making a push for that. We were extremely impressed with the students that we met and interviewed. We spent a day on campus after interviewing a myriad of students, maybe 8 to 10 students the next day, and got an opportunity to meet some of the younger students as well. So it's clear that the program and the college is making a push for that. So that's cool.
Are you guys doing anything with the younger students, like what Nick was saying with the eye contact, the handshakes, the willing to go out and kind of express themselves in front of these construction professionals to get the career they're going for, right? So are you guys doing anything, or is that just kind of the nature of the beast of people interested in construction are already kind of that more type A personality, outgoing?
I'm surprised how many are not, right? They're uncomfortable. We'll say, go to the career fair and they're like, well, how do I approach someone? And so most of that mentoring happens kind of on an informal basis, on a one-on-one. We'll promote the students to going out there. We'll even, give some sort of incentive in the classroom. Hey, go to the career fair and, indicate that you've talked to 3 different people and come back and you can get, a couple extra credit points or something like that. So there's that motivation side of it. And then, the students who step forward and say, but what do I do? We're there to kind of answer those on a one-on-one point of view, and the other thing that's really powerful is the help we get from industry. So one of the things that we have at our program is we call it construction industry seminar. So our Thursday nights, and this has been going on for years, we'll have someone from industry come in each Thursday night and give a 1-hour seminar on any topic. We typically pick a theme for the year, and we haven't set it yet for this year. But we'll pick a theme, and it could be anything from talk about a project to talk about technology to kind of anything, really, right? But we've also had people come in and talk about career, right? I mean, literally an HR person from, one of our sponsors will come in and say, look, here's the deal. When I get a resume, you have 5 seconds with me to go into the yes, no pile, right? So here's how to get into the yes pile in that first 5 seconds. And then once you're in the yes pile, here's how to get to the next pile. Do this, don't do this, right? Real concrete things. We've had people come in just give little seminars on interviewing skills, things like that. And so, we can provide it through that way, but really getting it from industry, getting those people who are actually hiring our students to tell them, hey, do this, don't do that, is huge. And then when I started with this idea of the culture, I mean, that's kind of my canned speech to every student who asks, what do I do? I've got this choice, is think about long-term. Think about the culture of the company. Think about your own personal needs and interests, and make sure they match, because no one's going to be happy if you're at a company for a year and decide to go somewhere else.
Yeah, it's interesting that you put it that way, because we do the exact same thing in reverse, right? And so when we're interviewing students and candidates, we take a look at them and say, are they going to fit in our culture? And so one of the things that Venn does is, I am not a micromanager. You're not going to show up here for work every morning and have a list of 27 things that I've provided for you. That's not how that's going to go here, right? And so self-starter is number 1 on the list, right? Like, we need people that know, what their tasks are going to be for the day and work to complete them. And Gavin can maybe weigh in on this a little bit more, but it's not that it's nebulous. There's a goal and there's a achievement that's intended, but it's not mapped out for you each and every day, right? And so we need, when we're interviewing, we're looking for folks that are going to fit into that culture and be able to self-start and not sit there meekly in a cubicle and wait for me to throw a bunch of work over your desk. Now, there are companies that do that, and if that's your personality and that's your work ethic and those things, that's awesome. We know that we're not that company. And so, when we were interviewing with Gavin, that was one of the things that we were chatting through, and maybe you can add some more to it, but that was one of the things we were talking through. It's like, hey, how do you do when you're just kind of left alone for a few days? What's that thought process like? So I don't know, do you have anything that you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot what I'm doing at work right now is super for you guys kind of on a project. It's just kind of like, I have my big schedule that I consider to be my list of tasks to do, and then I go in and break down, I've got to do this, this, and this. And I'm, not coming up to you like, hey, what should I do today? And it's like, I've got the master schedule, which is like your big list of tasks, but there's no means and methods. There's no daily breakdown of what I need to show up to work and do. It's, I show up to work, I look at my schedule, I look at my site, I look at who's coming to my site that day, and I figure out, all right, here's what I've got to do to get prepped for tomorrow and for next week. And so I kind of do that as I prep for tomorrow, and then I also prep for the week after, just so I'm always one step ahead of the game.
And you were telling me earlier that you're taking summer classes and you're doing stuff in these classes, and then you're going to work the next day and doing literally the same thing. So he's telling me that he's taking all of the stuff that he's learning in your classes and just exactly the same thing. He's doing, what were you saying?
I just took project operations, so I was doing daily logs, I was doing layout plans, I was doing scheduling. Everything I was doing at work, I would come home, open up my laptop, and just start doing homework, and it was the exact same thing I was doing at work.
It's almost cheating.
Yeah. Well, that's good feedback for Bruno.
No, it was a wonderful experience, and it was kind of like a little more, because it was in that you were treated kind of like you were a subcontractor, and then at work I'm a general contractor, so I kind of got to see both sides of the work balance of being a subcontractor and then being a general contractor for the projects,
which is important because I think a lot of people go through a CM program and they think, well, I just have to go work for a general contractor.
Right.
That's not the case at all. There's a myriad of opportunities within construction, and honestly, for the right kind of person or the opportunities that present itself, working with a subcontracting firm is just an unbelievable opportunity and affords all of the same skill sets to be applied to it. And I think there's a stigma that it's like, well, I got to go work for a GC. I mean, that's what I'm doing, right? But that's not the case.
Well, we really saw that back, with the recession, was it 12, 14 years ago, where our program was really heavy into the big GCs, right? And all of a sudden, they weren't hiring as much, and there wasn't as much, input into the program. And we said, well, we need to branch out a little bit. And that's when we've gotten a lot more of the trade partners involved, materials, suppliers in our program. And that's given so many more opportunities because, the ability to go work for a trade partner who may actually have, their contract on a job may actually be covering more money than you're making as the general, right? Because they have so much scope, right?
Yeah,
think about mechanical, think about doing finishes, right? And it's like a business within a business, right? And they're running businesses, and it's a different perspective, and we've been able to add a lot of that perspective by bringing in more of those trade partners to the program.
I mean, it's a really, really great foresight because I think the other opportunity is a lot of people in construction may gravitate there because it's very entrepreneurial, and the entrepreneurial opportunities within the subcontracting world or the material supply world are even greater. And so there's a lot of opportunity within the sub trade market, material supply, consulting world that all kind of stems from that same backbone. And I think the industry would benefit greatly with more folks stepping into the subcontracting world, into the the supply chain world that have that construction management education and background for sure.
One of the things we really try to do is generate this empathy. Say you're going to go the traditional route of going into project management for a general contractor, right? It's still super important to understand that perspective of the trade partner, right? And so, Gavin was alluding to the class. He was a TA for me. It's called the 300 Lab. We have a very unique lab at NAU. We call it the C4P, Construct for Practice. And it is a one-unit lab, and the students take essentially the same lab 3 times. The first time they take it, maybe as a sophomore, where they're physically building something. We change it every year a little bit, but picture about a 4x4, like the corner of this room right here, a little bit of a foundation, stud walls, metal stud walls, some dense glass on the outside, waterproofing details. The whole idea is to kind of get the feel of how the materials work together, right? And over the course of the semester, they build that in a team. Simultaneously, there's a group who has done that the past semester who are now the designers, right? They're in the computer lab in real time designing and issuing drawings to the field that, they may be only a week or 2 ahead of construction, and they're issuing drawings, specifications, running it all through Procore, so they're getting the experience of using, the cloud-based management software for everything, RFIs, submittals, drawings, and whatnot. And so they act as designers. And they're designing it all in 3D in Revit and then issuing it out. Then as seniors, or their third time, they go through it again. Now they're the project managers. So they're in the field with the sophomores. They're, setting safety. They're procuring materials. They're the ones processing sending the RFIs, processing the submittals, everything like that. And so, we're never going to make our students proficient BIM modelers, right? We're not going to make them expert drywall finishers, right? But to understand that that's a real craft and it's not easy to do, that empathy that they get, the realization, I teach the 300 lab, which is the design lab, and they get these RFIs that are just ambiguous, or the information's on the drawings, right? And all of a sudden, especially those who have had internships, they're like, oh, I've written that RFI.
Yeah, and I got it back from an architect with a long list of don't write me a stupid RFI.
Right,
Yeah.
and so I sit there and they're like, how do I answer this? How do I answer this RFI? I'm like, well, you have two different tacks you can take.
Yeah.
You could throw it back at them and be adversarial.
Yep.
You can help them so that they write a good RFI next time. You can go these different routes. And so, we get at the end of the semester, I'll have students give me some feedback, like, what'd you learn in this class, right? And, I'd say 20% of them say, I never want to be an architect. I don't ever want to touch BIM again, right? But
Right.
they understand what it takes.
Right.
They've touched it.
Yep.
And I don't know of any other program that does, this sort of, we call it the integrated lab, that gives them that experience.
I love it, and I think empathy is the right word. I don't know that I would have pulled that out of my head, but that's absolutely the right word. And I think there's just an appreciation for all of the hands that it takes, to put a project together. And I think I always joke around that we don't do any work, right? I make a joke all the time that we don't do any work, right? So we are primarily a construction manager, general contractor, right? And so we hire the sub-trades. We don't self-perform. We do design build, but we contract the architect, right? We don't have architecture in-house. And so, but we also get involved extremely early with the majority of our deals. And so we'll get clients that come to us before they've engaged the architect, before they've located financing, maybe even before they've found a parcel of land or a building to renovate. And so we get to play very early with concept. And so there's a lot of involvement with the design phase. We do a lot of design assist. And I think because of that, you really get an appreciation for what's going on the design side. We engage subcontractor partners during that process because they're the ones that are going to physically put this together.
Sure.
And so help me iron out this detail. What's easier about this? Why? This looks great on paper, but in the field it's a disaster because I have to have, 3 hands touch it in a short amount of time, so it's not productive, it's not efficient, it's going to cost. And so we get involved in that really early. And so the fact that you guys are integrating that really is a snapshot of what life is going to be like, in the short future when you step into these things, because different contractors do things differently, and it's construction. It's not rocket science, but it has to be done the right way, right? And there's a bunch of different ways to do it, but have you located the most efficient? Have you located the most cost effective and highest level of quality within that mode? And we ask a lot of questions, and I think that's really kind of you lean on your experts. It's impossible to expect to be all things to all people. So if we've got a waterproofing detail, we'll lean, on a waterproofing consultant. We'll lean on a waterproofing subcontractor. We'll lean on a concrete sub. If there's a foundational issue, we'll call a structural engineer. And I think just learning that all of those different experts exist within the field, and it's not expected of you to be, an expert drywall finisher, but it's expected of you to know what it takes to do it, right? And I think that's really kind of where the differentiation lies. So I think that's cool. I like that a lot.
I think an interesting approach I take to thinking about what we're actually doing. We have students for approximately 4 years, and we think we're teaching them how to be builders or, constructors or whatnot. But there's not a lot of time there. And what I've really realized is we're teaching them a language. They're not going to know exactly how to, do the whole submittal process. They may have touched it or whatnot, but they know the language of a submittal process. They know what has to be done. But they're also translators, right? I mean, you think about what you do, the language you use when you're talking to a trade partner versus talking to an owner versus talking to an architect, right? you know. And I think one of the classic examples I always think about is I got a call from the field. I was doing this project in Madison, Wisconsin, and as a structural engineer, I get a call, and the contractor said, "Yeah, a truck hit this beam, and it's over in this part of the job." And I'm like, okay, a beam, and I'm thinking about it from the design standpoint. Okay, beams tend to be redundant, you know, so if one had a little bit of a failure, it can transfer the load to the other one, and it's not hugely critical. But let's see what's going on. And then he sends me the picture. Well, his beam, which structural engineers, a beam is a horizontal element, you know, that transfers load, was actually a vertical beam, which we call columns, right? Yeah. And you knock out a column, that's a little bit bigger deal.
Right.
And so all of a sudden now I'm approaching it differently and realizing that using the right language, you know, in the field, you know, beam is an I-shaped element, right? To some people. A beam to an engineer is a very specific thing, and it might be something totally different to the owner, right? And so being able to kind of switch between those different languages, depending on who you're talking to, is super critical to a construction manager. And so, you know, I think about it from that perspective of really trying to help them with a language.
Yeah, I love that. That's a really great point, and I think totally true, just 100% accurate. I mean, we chat through that with our guys too, just about how you know, what your level of professionalism and communication needs to be, and what the expectation is, right? And I think in today's world, the expectation for communication is huge, and everything is moving so fast. And the introduction of technology, in my opinion, has almost convoluted the process, right? Because now there's really no excuse you didn't see that RFI response. Well, why not? Well, it just binged on your phone, you know, 10 seconds ago. So you should have had that. Well, it's just answered 10 seconds ago. You know what I mean? Like, like there's an expectation that you're communicating in real time with everything. And so what's happening with the speed expectations of construction today is communication is actually getting more difficult.
Right.
Architects are being forced to push out documents before they're complete. And so you're working with an incomplete set of documents, but it's okay because we'll just update it while you're under construction, right?
Because we can do that.
Because we can do that, right? And so making sure that everybody's, you know, I always say singing from the same sheet music, complicated. And that's really, you know, specifically with the younger generation coming out, their skill sets in managing that technology and managing that has actually been a really big help, and specifically in Gavin's case, you know, with some of our more seasoned field teams, because that's just life, right? Like the younger generation can pick up the technology and move a little quicker than, you know, than the seasoned teams. On the flip side, the seasoned vets are coming back around and teaching, like, so that we don't lose this lost art of construction, you know what I mean? And so I think it's been kind of a fun interaction, specifically having Gavin on staff and you know, watching him interact with really two of our senior superintendents, which has been kind of fun. So what from this summer? Summer's coming to a close, which those of us in Phoenix like. But you know, so what do you got from the last couple of months that you kind of picked up on, things about the program that have been beneficial, or just kind of your experience?
I mean, this is my first internship, and I'm not from a family of constructors. My family's teachers and truck drivers, so this was all new to me when I transferred to construction management from computer science. But, I mean, every professor always said, I teach what you'll actually use. And I'm like, okay, we'll see when I, you know, get an internship or whatnot. We'll see if you're telling the truth or just blowing smoke at me. And then, you know, first day in the field, I'm like, holy crap, they're actually teaching me stuff I'm using every day. You know, I'm coming out of here, just finishing my concrete and masonry class. I'm building a concrete and masonry building right now. That's the building I'm on. And I'm like, oh, this is why the masons are doing this. This is, you know, why I have to do it this way, because if I don't, then I'm getting screwed over. And communication has been a huge part of all that. And, you know, I love technology. I have loved the Procore integration that we use and everything of that. Even at school, it's been great to come into, you know, working for Venn and having that knowledge of Procore. And I'm jokingly called the IT guy at our field trailer by our electrician subcontractor, because they come into my office about once a day with their iPad being like, hey, can you help me with Procore today? And so I'm like, yeah, let's figure out what's going on with it. Or they're like, hey, my Excel's broken. What do I do? Just because, you know, I've got that experience of technology and coming in with a different background from a lot of other students who are straight into construction management. They turn 18, they go to college, they hit construction management. I turned 18, I went to college for a year, and then I dropped out and joined the military. And then did some time in the military, got hurt, got out, it's all fine. Went construction management, fell in love with it. But having a different background has been wonderful in being at Venn and help learning and teaching and doing everything I can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. It's just an odd coincidence, but we rolled out Procore this year.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was nice to have, I think Gavin had more experience with Procore than anybody on the staff at the time when you started as an intern.
Well, we had Patrick, who is also an NAU student. So all of our NAU students are like
our NAU
Procore
students
experts.
helped us integrate our software this year, which has been kind of fun. But yeah,
it's all the young guys, the millennials and Gen Z. You just end up being tech
Mm-hmm.
support.
Well, the interesting thing about the technology, they talk about the digital natives, right?
Yeah.
But what I've really learned is the young people are really good at the digital platforms that they know and they use.
Yep.
But they're just as hesitant as seasoned, older people to pick up something new.
Yeah.
Right? And that's something I think you don't hear a lot about. The assumption is, okay, I've got this young person, they were born with a phone in their hand, therefore they like that and they're going to be good at anything I throw. And that's not necessarily the case. Yes,
true.
for some people, I mean, you got someone who's coming from a computer science background.
Yeah.
Cheater. Got a cheater there, right? But a lot of them, like I'll say, look, you're gonna learn Revit,
Yeah.
right? And they're just really, and they do it, and then they get through it, and they're like, okay, I think I've got my hands around it. You're gonna use Procore, okay? And they struggle with it and whatnot. They have just as big of a learning curve sometime as someone who isn't a digital native. And I think sometimes we just assume that they're going to pick it up immediately and like it. And it's not necessarily the case. And that's something to be aware of, But the technology, it's a game changer. I mean, across the board. And, it's double-edged sword, like you said. I remember when I started was kind of the advent of CAD, right? So my first project, I was checking shop drawings off of Mylar and ink, right? I'm like, and when you had to commit something to Mylar and ink, it's done, right? So it's going to be done, and then it goes out and gets built, right? Whereas, I remember issuing drawings and like, well, we can change it later, so just put something in CAD, right? And it looks done because it looks really good in CAD, and it really isn't. And you run into that problem as well. That we're talking about the real time, and that was when everything was still, maybe it was in CAD, but you're still slip sheeting, you're still photocopying and sticky backing on the back of the drawings. And there was the master set in the trailer, and God knows what else, what version was floating around everywhere else. And the technology has really helped with that. I think that's one of the beautiful things is document management and making sure everyone has the most current information.
So we got about 10 more minutes left.
Okay.
I have 2 questions for you.
All
One
right.
is kind of an important question that Nick and I have been asking. Every single one of our interviews with students, I would say 99% of them say, I want to be in the field. I want to be a superintendent. What are you guys doing to turn all of these kids into like, I want to be a superintendent?
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
I think it's a great thing.
So
it's unique. I'll tell you, it's unique.
So it is, and it's one of the things that I think differentiates us from other schools. So a little bit of history. Our program came out of a superintendent training program.
I did not know that. Yeah.
Prior to formally being construction management, it was much more of a trade level superintendent program. And then when we went through accreditation to be accredited as construction management bachelor's degree, had to transition into a much more professional program because of the requirements, a lot more of the management, whatnot. But we've realized that we wanted to keep those ties back to the history, right? Hands-on. And so originally we had we had classes that had embedded labs. You would take concrete class, and it was 2 credits of lecture and a credit of doing something with concrete, right? Testing, making some forms, casting some concrete. We had a masonry class, same sort of thing. We had an electrical class, steel class. All of them had hands-on aspects of it. And it was about 2012 where we said that, that's good, but casting a little piece of concrete in a form out of context of what that concrete has to interface with, we're missing something.
Yeah.
And that's when we developed the integrated lab. We said, let's pull all these labs out and put them together into one. And now you're going to cast concrete, but it's got to be in the right place. So you have to survey it first. And it's got to have some anchor bolts in it so it'll line up with the next trade. And it's got to have a shelf for the masonry, et cetera, right? And so it's been very important to our curriculum because we realize that the importance of having that field work to keep our ties to that.
Yeah.
We also seem to attract a lot of students. I don't know if it's a more rural location out of Phoenix that just have more of a background of, rural background, wanting to do that sort of work, right? So it kind of self-perpetuates, right? We get students who are interested in it. We've got the history, so we try to serve our students. I would say, if you were to ask me, I'd say half kind of want to go the field route and half want to go more of the office pre-construction side. And so we acknowledge that. We know that. We're always talking to them. And so we make sure that what we're doing in our curriculum actually serves both of those.
I love it.
And the reputation we get, we have a lot of people. We are, 2 hours out of Phoenix, yet we have people like you who make the trip up to recruit.
It's worth it.
We have contractors that are, walking distance from, our sister university down here in the valley, and they come up and recruit from us just as much as they do down the street because we have a reputation for having just a different type of student.
Yeah.
I get a lot of feedback that our students are ready to work. They're scrappy. They don't have a chip on their shoulder. They just show me what to do. I'll do it. They don't come in expecting the corner office on day one. And you hear this, and you hear the stories, right? You hear the stories, and we play to that. We say that's a strength of our program that differentiates us, and we're going to continue to nurture that.
Yeah.
Awesome. So going off of that, the programs that you guys are offering for people like us, like your golf tournament, your shooting tournament, it's invaluable for us to get face-to-face time. That's how we met Gavin. I just went to a group full of kids and I said, hey, we need interns, and I handed out
I was
cards.
trying to remember. We didn't bump into you at the student night, right?
No, I was kind of just moving around the room, got caught up in talking to other tables and such, and just...
Man.
He didn't care about us.
We must have...
Venn, I've never heard of them. They're small.
We didn't have the bait on the hook to pull them in or something.
Right.
Sorry, go ahead, Matt.
Now you're a golden child. Put you on a poster like Louis the Lumberjack.
Yeah.
But the programs that you're offering for larger construction firms, smaller construction firms are invaluable for us. So how is that evolving? What are your plans for the future? And I guess this will be our last question. We're running out of time.
Yeah.
But.
Sure. So, it really came from a necessity. Started out with kind of a financial necessity. Being a state school, we have only so many financial resources to do what we need to do. And one of the big expenses we have is sending students to the Reno competition, the Associated Schools of Construction competition up in Sparks, Nevada. And, it costs us $30,000 to send, 4 teams to that. So we had that need, right? And so we said, well, let's talk to industry. We had a really good sponsor that kind of bankrolled a big chunk of it in the past. And we said, well, let's see if we can generate enough money to cover that event. And we started that out, and we said, let's give something back, right? It's like not just ask people send us a check for $5,000, $10,000, but like, what do you get in return? So we developed we call it the Gen Next sponsorship program, and we have a silver, gold, and platinum levels. And, the idea is at those levels, you get to come to our events, right? But what's more than that is you get our attention. I mean, our platinum sponsors, if someone calls me up and says, hey, this is something, we'd like to do or we need, they get our attention. And we do what we can to help out. And so that has generated, I mean, we generate a couple $100,000 a year easily, or more, to help us with things that the state can't fund, right? But in return, we listen to our industry. We have an industry advisory board, and we say, hey, this is what we'd like to, provide to industry. How does that sound? And we get really good feedback. And so, we realized the golf tournament's been around for many years. We've been in the 20 plus years we've been doing a golf tournament, the Village of Oak Creek. And, it was probably 8 years ago now, 7, 8 years ago, the industry advisory board said, hey, let's do something else. How about we do a sporting clays down in Phoenix? And the industry advisory board organized that. It's their event. And they did all the work on figuring out how we're going to do the event, helping us get sponsors and things like that. And it's really grown, right? So we have we do the golf tournament in the fall. The sporting clays is usually in February, end of February. We had been doing an alumni event in January, but we're going to move that this year to around homecoming. So at homecoming, we're going to do an alumni event. And then our big culmination really is our graduation banquet. We call it the demo ball, the demolition ball. And, this year we had 350 people.
Wow.
Got the High Country Conference Center in Flagstaff. Nice big event, bringing a keynote speaker. It was great. We brought the guy who hired me, Dr. Steve Mead, who's since retired. We brought him in this year to come back and give the keynote. And it's just a great place to get industry together with students. But, the other thing that I think we provide to industry is this kind of neutral place where those of you who are competing out there, right? You're going, head to head on with each other on proposals, but you come into the room and you're working together to help our program produce more construction managers, right? Yeah. And so I see this kind of this nice, almost neutral playing ground where you can develop those relationships among the different supporters, and I think that's a really good role that we play.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's entirely true. We had a good time chatting with the other folks at the career fair and just kind of meeting and greeting with some of the guys that we don't always get a chance to rub elbows with. So that was cool. Any questions for us? Anything that we could answer for you as we kind of get ready to wrap this up?
I think the most important thing is just getting the feedback from you on what you're seeing. I've learned a lot just sitting here today, talking to you, what's working and maybe things that aren't working, things that we could improve, because there's constant improvement that has to happen. I mean, the things we're focusing going forward is, we've got a very active group with LCI, Lean Construction Institute. I mean, Patrick was one of the first people really working with me on that group. We were one of the first student communities of practice in the country, developed that for LCI. So we're trying, instead of having a class on lean, we try to integrate lean in a lot of classes, right? We just developed an elective on drone training where students are getting their FAA certification, right?
I want to do that.
And that, that could blossom, right? We could actually be offering in the summer programs for, you to send your project managers up to Flagstaff
I like that.
for a week to kind of get that hands-on training. So, we just need to know kind of what are your needs as well, because we have those opportunities. We're developing, we've got a building science program, a master's program in building science that is really complementary to construction management. And, that's something that we could, there could be some partnerships there as well. So
awesome. Yeah, I mean, I love it. I think the fact that the conversation is open, you know, between industry and you and your program is really what, you know, is going to keep it. Just has to evolve all the time, right?
It does.
And in a similar way, we're constantly evolving to the changes within construction. If the, you know, the education system is not also evolving, then it's just there's a bigger gap, right? And so then when the folks come in to their job, there's just a bigger gap that we have to close. And so I think in our experience, what's happening is the gap with an NAU student is much smaller. And I think that you know, that has really been the big benefit. It's you know, the guys are coming out not necessarily ready to sprint, but at least ready to jog, you know, and there's a difference there. And I think that the delta in that gap closing is really kind of what the advantage has been over the last handful of years specifically. And that's all that we can really speak to, because that's been our, you know, our level of experience. But I think the fact that the program's evolving, that you guys are thinking about it, that you're working and tapping into industry, because it really is amazing how much our industry changes, and every industry changes, right? And so I think all of that is really really beneficial to the program, to industry, you know, and the labor workforce shortage is not just in the trades, right? I mean, as general contractors, we're experiencing this, you know, in our industry, just in general. Estimators, project managers, superintendents, all the above. You know, so you guys are helping fill that need, and we're appreciative.
Yeah, and I think that last, you know, that gap, I mean, I think there's even opportunities for us to not only close the gap, but leapfrog it. I think these issues we have in construction, the mindset issues, right? I mean, some of that is just, you know, there's attrition that as people retire out of the system, we have younger people in the system, things will change. But that's a very slow-moving ship. But having the young people come out and, you know, assume that you're going to be applying lean principles on your job, assuming that you're going to be treating women fairly and equally on the job site, you know, that's the type of thing that I think the young people can really move the needle. And those are the things we should be working on together.
Yeah, I agree. Awesome. Thank you so much, John. We really appreciate your time.
I'm glad I could come down and talk with y'all.
Awesome.
Great. Thanks, John.
All right.
That was cool.
Is that good? Is that what you're looking for?